You're finally at that hot new spot, the one your friends keep raving about, sitting across from your date. It's going...
Another round?
Really well. And that dish you've been dying to try, oh, it's headed your way. You can smell it, hear it sizzling fresh off that skillet as it comes closer, closer, and served. Go ahead, enjoy. After your phone sneaks a bite first. When you're with Amex, it's not if it's going to happen, but when. American Express. Don't live life without it.
Hey, it's Christine with Storyworthy. Today on the show, author Haley McGee talks about dating a philanderer.
And he just from across the bar pointed at me and made a beeline. And I was like, oh boy, here we go. Here we go. It was so exciting to have somebody catch me in their crosshairs like that. It was a really new experience for me. And it was just banter, kinetic conversation. He was like he fell in love with me on the spot and was instantly taken with me. And I loved it.
Today on the show, Haley McGee, the author of The Ex-Boyfriend Yard Sale, talks about dating a philanderer. Stay close.
Hey, it's Haley McGee, and you're listening to Storyworthy.
Welcome to Storyworthy. My name is Christine Blackburn, and I'm coming to you from Los Angeles, California. Whether you're a longtime fan of the show or a new listener, welcome to Storyworthy. Now, I hope you guys enjoyed the story last week from comedian Jacob Rosales. Jacob was talking about how his father died of COVID-19. Not necessarily a unique story, but, you know, he had a good, I don't mean to say a good take on it, but, you know, Jacob really talked about how the whole family handled it. Like, you know, just the family discourse and how to handle it, and, you know, the funeral. And anyway, it was not as sad as it sounds. And we also learned a few things, like here in the United States, if your loved one dies of COVID, the government will give you $9,000.
Wow.
If you qualify. In other words, if you're like super wealthy, but if you're needing of, you know, COVID relief, if somebody passes, then our government here in the U.S. helps out. So go back, you guys, listen to Jacob Rosales talking about his dad and his family. It's a good story, but not today, because today I'm here with author Haley McGee. And today we're talking about dating a chronic philanderer. So that's like a whole different story. But I do want to ask you, Haley, you're in London, right?
I'm in London. I'm from Canada. I was born and raised in a place called Kitchener-Waterloo, and then lived in Toronto for about a decade. But now I live in London in the UK. Yeah. So
tell me the COVID situation over there, if you would.
Well, to be totally honest, I've been in a little bit of a personal isolation act, so I haven't looked at the numbers in about 2 weeks, but more people in my friend circle than ever before have had COVID in the last 2 months, which I think is pretty common. My friends in Canada have been saying the same thing, that, with Omicron out there, people are dropping like flies.
I mean, it's wild, right? I have so many friends and family members that have had that. I've been able to not get it. I'm not sure if that's because I'm lucky or if that's because I smoke a lot of weed. Because now they're showing, well, they are.
Yes.
Cannabinoids, you know, here we go. I've said it 1,000 times before. You know, weed is a miracle drug for many, many things. And if it's the case with COVID, then I am, you know, I'm Wonder Woman. I'm superhuman. I'm never going to die. So, so yeah, it is bad over there, but you're not really going out. Is that the idea?
Well, yeah, I haven't been going out too much, and I'm double vaxxed, I'm boosted, and I'm not looking at the news. I'm trying not to freak myself out too much with the numbers. Yeah. Yeah. But I'm also, not going to nightclubs and that kind of thing.
Right. Well, I don't even think it takes like a nightclub. I think it can just be going over to a family dinner or whatever.
Yeah.
And when
It's
you're
so
sitting
true.
across from somebody, you know, that you're sharing that space. And so, it's really, you know, it's just, I didn't think it would still be with us 2 years later. And here we are.
It's a drag.
It is a drag.
It really?
Yeah, it's a drag. My daughter's in 9th grade. And in a way, now that she has like a friend she's hanging out with a lot, you know, I can't say boy. I have to say, you know, other, they, everybody's they. And since they are hanging out a lot, I am not that against the masks, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, that's great. That is a great barrier to young love. It's like a modern day chaperone.
It is, because in a way, like before they even kiss each other, they have to say, could you take your mask off? Like, so like the word is coming down before they even get to it. But it's cute. It's sweet. You know, I'm a cool mom, damn it. Come on, Haley. But, you know, I'm not that cool because I don't want they penis going in they daughter. You know what I'm saying? Or
Fair enough. I can only imagine.
Oh my gosh. So listen, you bring forth a topic, dating a chronic philanderer, and I can't wait to hear the story. But I guess what off the bat is, if you date a chronic philanderer, you don't know that, right? You don't know that when you start dating them.
Well, I mean, we'll get into it more with the story, but I think that what's really interesting about dating a chronic philanderer is that on some level, you know, when you get into it, you have on some level like, this feels maybe too good to be true, or there's something about this person that is so intoxicating, but it's hard to know if I can really trust it. I don't know if I can fully get my hands around what's going on here. And I think, so I do think, you know, the way sometimes you find out a secret and your reaction isn't really surprise, but it's kind of like, oh yeah, I knew that. Somewhere deep inside myself, I knew that. I just didn't want to acknowledge to myself that I knew it. So yeah, you don't know, but you know.
But you know, that's the thing. I mean, it's like my first husband, I've been married twice, and my first husband, you know, he got another girl pregnant while we were married, right?
Oh,
so
boy.
not me, somebody else. And then after, you know, of course we split because that's sort of a deal breaker, as it were.
Fair enough. Yeah.
And then they went on to have a baby, and then I guess another baby. And then she cheated on him with another guy and then had like twins with that guy. I guess what I'm saying is, like, when he and I were married, she knew that. She knew while they were having an affair. Obviously, she knew he was married. And also because he was a musician and she was coming to hear him play, and I was there and I knew her. I mean, you know, it was very clear. So, but if you go out with somebody who's already cheating to go out with you, well, then it's all your problem. Am I right?
I think that as my therapist says, the best indicator of someone's future behavior is their past behavior. But I think there's something in us humans that wants to be the one to change a rascal, you know, and I think particularly some women really have it. They're like, it's going to be different with me. Actually, I don't think this is exclusive to women. I think there is something in some of us that is like, I want to be so magnificent, so special, so extraordinary that I can turn the most badass, kind of horrible person, or the most neurotic or the most pathological person. They're going to forego whatever is making them weird for me because I'm just that extraordinary. I don't think it is so much of a savior complex as it is incredible kind of like, what's the word? Pompousness or self-aggrandizing to think that you could turn someone who is
it's an ego. Yeah, it's an ego thing.
An ego. That's the word I was looking for. Ego.
However, to be fair, in the beginning of a relationship, it is very exciting.
It's the best.
You're not exactly. It's the best. It's not just fireworks going off. It's like your world is changing. Every thought in your mind is surrounding that person and being with them and touching them. And there's an electricity in the air. Really. I mean, you can walk into a restaurant and see a couple at a table and boom, they're either in love or they are not. I mean, you can see that. So to be fair, everybody thinks that it's special because it is. It
is. And
but what I'm saying, what I'm saying is that when you meet somebody, if you ask them, tell me about your last relationship, right? And how did it end? That's a huge indicator of what's going on. That's a huge indicator. How long ago was it? Are you still in it? I mean, these are all such great questions, but it is hard to discern what is fantasy, what is real, and what, like you said, what you think will change.
Yeah. Yes. I think, the pragmatic approach really is to find out, how long have you been single? How long did your last relationship last? Oh, are you still in it? Are you actually in an open marriage, or is that something that you just decided? Those are good things to suss out, but it is hard, I think. Because
did you decide on the open marriage when you saw me? Is that when you guys?
I just watched the most recent episode of the Sex and the City reboot, which was something that happens to Miranda, where, this person they're dating is like, so wait a minute, your marriage isn't open? And she's like, no, I guess I could have the conversation. Yeah.
That's funny. So listen, Haley, you are now an author. I mean, you are an actress, you are a writer, and most of the guests on the show are comedians, writers, actors, kind of all of those things, which you kind of need to be. But you've now added published author to your resume, and this is it's an amazing book, and it's by Penguin Random House, which is very reputable and very exciting. So congratulations there. And what I love about the book is you get the whole gist of the book by the title, which is The Ex-Boyfriend Yard Sale. And I got to tell you, now my audience knows I have a game show called Story Smash. Yes, we know this. We played the other night. Hilarious. By the way, the next show is February 26th. Get your tickets now. Saturday, February 26th. Story Smash at the Hollywood Improv. But the point is, this game I've been playing for about 11 years. And one of the big elements in the game is this wheel, and I had to get a wheel. And my daughter was like 3 years old at the time, and I was married. And, I was looking up how to buy a prize wheel. And the wheel I really wanted, like a good wheel, as it were, was from Riverside Prize Wheels or Riverside Promo Wheels. And it was $680.
Oh, shit.
Well, I didn't have $680, so I started thinking. And what I ended up doing was selling all of my jewelry, all my gold jewelry that guys had gotten me in the past. So I sold the Italian horn necklace from Bobby Pfeiffer. I took out the Hobie Cat sailboat from Reed James. I took these necklaces, got it all melted down, got the cash, and bought the prize wheel. Hence, Story Smash, fun game show. And then another element in the show is is a clock, and it's a very specific clock. You see it in government buildings and in banks and post offices, but it's one of those very clear clocks that counts down and counts up. And so I needed that, and that was $80. And I had to order it from India. And anyway, I sold my breast pump for that. So I understand selling stuff to get money. Mm-hmm. And your book that we just mentioned, The Ex-Boyfriend Yard Sale, the idea here is that you sell all the gifts from your exes, and then that way you can pay off your credit card debt. That's essentially it, right?
That's where it starts. Yeah. And then what swiftly happens is that I realize selling these items is not going to pay off my debt. My debt is way bigger than I could ever get for any of these items. And so I get kind of fixated on this idea of turning sentimental value into cash and trying to figure out, well, what if the price of this necklace that I have isn't just about the physical necklace itself, but what if we take into account the fact that I have this white gold sapphire and diamond necklace? It's probably the most valuable thing given to me by an ex. And I started thinking, well, this is the person I lost my virginity to. So surely that increases the value.
Yes.
And, but I told this person I loved him and I knew I was lying. So maybe that decreases the value. But when I went to visit him one time, I had to take a bus, and on the bus, someone had wedged a box cutter, like a X-Acto knife, between the seats. And I moved to get comfortable, and the knife sliced through my new jeans into the flesh of my bum, drawing blood. So surely that flesh wound increases the value of the necklace that he gave me. And I became so obsessed with this idea of translating sentimental value into cash that I thought, I originally I'm a theater person, and I've been making one-woman shows, and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to make a one-woman show about this quest to do this. And so that's kind of like, it starts from getting out of debt by selling the objects, and then it ends up being my quest to create a show about this process that will get me out of debt.
And so in your solo show, did you have items on stage like a pair of skis or a guitar that somebody had given you, that sort of thing?
Yes.
So smart,
yes.
so clever. I think it's so fun. And then essentially in the book, you come up with a formula for the cost of love.
That's right.
There's a cost of love. So something, a trinket that might not be a big deal to somebody else, you might put a lot of value on that.
Exactly, because of all the things that it represents, like how much fun you had in the relationship, what rites of passage you went through. One of my items is a mixtape, and a mixtape is a pretty much worthless item. But after it's gone through my formula, which I created with a real mathematician, it's one of the most valuable items I have for sale. Yeah.
That is so funny. And I read the book. I love the book. And your agent or somebody, your publicist, sent me a galley of it. And then also in the book, you actually start formulating other things, including the things that you may have done wrong. And my favorite part is when you formulate the I did batshit wild card. And tell us about that.
Well, it wouldn't be fair, I don't think, to make a book of putting my exes through this kind of rigorous assessment process without also looking at my own behavior.
Right.
And, this adage that every relationship is a 50-50 co-creation, which is another thing my therapist says. I write about her a lot in the book. And so I thought, okay, I have to put my hand up and be accountable for the bad shit that I did in my relationships that might be coloring how things panned out, how I feel about them now. So we look at things like, how long I was doing the bad shit, whatever that might have been. Whether that was lying, it's really lying for me, and kind of lying by omission, hiding things.
That's the most, real quick here, that's the most common lie, is the lie of omission. And I lived that. I did that. I pulled that card for 10, 15 years in my life. I did it all the time. Yeah. I mean, with guys, I wouldn't mention, when I was a flight attendant, and so I had a boyfriend in California, I had a boyfriend in Colorado, I had a boyfriend in South Carolina. So I was, I'm going out to see my friend in Colorado, my friend. And that's true. That's true. Mm-hmm. But I didn't say I'm going out to fuck this guy in Colorado.
Yeah. It wasn't the whole truth.
And that was what was happening. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. 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 So we look at things like, how long you were doing the bad shit, maybe how many times I repeated it, how well I took responsibility for it, the red flags that my ex should have noticed.
Well, look, red flags we all should notice, but it's a very nuanced red. And, we all see it a little differently. It's subjective, to say the least.
And, I think there is that thing, going back to what you were saying earlier, when you're first with somebody, especially, scientists are talking about this more and more now. You're essentially on drugs. You're high. The chemicals coursing through us when we're falling in love don't let us think straight or see straight. And so marking down the red flags is challenging. I worked with a woman once who said to me, she's like, you know what? When you're in that stage, just keep a little notebook and write down every red flag so that when things go wrong, you can look back and say, I knew it was coming. I haven't been blindsided.
The idea is think of the bad things. Don't think of the fun. Think of the shit. That's the way to do it. Now here's where it gets a little foggy in the book. Just because I've had a lot of boyfriends and I've been putting myself into I've been doing some of the things that you did in the book, like you called your boyfriend typewriter or bicycle based on things they gave you. So I started thinking, I have aquarium, I have motorcycle helmet, and it wasn't even my motorcycle. Ski boy. And then I've got one I just called Gladiola, because Gladiola was this friend of mine, this guy I dated, and he loved gladiolas so much, the flowers. So he would always bring them to me. But nobody has a vase prepared for gladiolas. I mean, it's a long flower. They call it the sword orchid.
I didn't know that was
or maybe the orchid sword. I'm not sure. But in other words, they're long. So I just call him Gladiola because, enough with the gladiolas. I don't have that kind of vase,
Yeah. But that's also interesting because that's a gift about him. It's not necessarily about you.
Boy, isn't that the truth? Isn't that the truth? But here's where I wanted to just mention one thing. We're going to get over to your story is that when I look back at my past boyfriends and husbands, my feelings change and my thoughts shift. And so I'm always a little softer than when I was going through it. You know what I mean? I mean, as you get further away, it changes. Am I right? You're laughing at me. Is that true?
I think it's true. It's true for me. I think it's the kind of thing where, as your experiences keep evolving, the way you view the past evolves too. And sometimes
that's what I mean.
And sometimes I think it does soften, but I think also sometimes there's new information and then suddenly you can find yourself really angry about something in the past that you hadn't been. It's like these assessments are temporary. It's kind of like a stock, it's like the stocks. It's like how you feel about an ex is going to be different each and every day. And what that relationship is worth is going to go up and down given the current climate.
Right. And it ain't ever going to be as high as when you first had sex.
Probably not.
I mean, just probably not. That's all I'm saying. The other thing I wanted to mention to you is that I know, and then we got to get to your story. Right. I know that you once did a job that I did as well. Well, I didn't actually get through. I did the training for a week and then they said, you're not good enough. And I didn't get it. Oh. But that was to do a medical role play job.
Yes.
So that is when doctors, when they become doctors, they go through a certain amount of schooling and then they have to go through these live scenarios and how they approach the patient, ask the patient questions. And then what they're doing is they're working with actors and actresses like me and Haley McGee. Where did you do it, Haley?
I did it in London here I think I did it at the School of Gynecology, Obstetrics and Gynecology. Yeah. At one of the universities in London.
But it's not easy because, I don't know for you, but for us, they would give us an ailment, you have a backache, but don't tell anybody, like it's a secret, like that's your ailment. And then you have to pretend that, but the doctor has to ask you the right questions in the right order and the right time to get to that.
Exactly.
What is it? That
diagnosis and also diagnosis. Yeah. And they would give us like a brief. So you'd sort of have a page, your name, your age, your symptoms. And then sometimes there would be I did one where I was a Jehovah's Witness and I was suffering from some kind of issue. But there's certain kind of blood transfusions that Jehovah's Witnesses can't have and other kinds that they can have. But it was really about, in that particular exam, they had to ask about my religion and then they'd know they could treat me in a specific way. And so some of them would get it and some of them wouldn't. And I did another one that was all about breaking bad news where they had to tell me that I had a certain kind of ovarian cancer. And then I would cry and they would have to, and it was all about assessing how their bedside manner was someone who was crying. And so you're in a little examination room and, there's like a clock going, you're in a little examination room with an actual doctor who's assessing all of the trainee doctors, and the doctors come in and you go through this little appointment and then hopefully they've done a good job and then a buzzer goes and they have to leave.
But the people that are assessing aren't present in the room, right?
They're sitting in the room, but they're not allowed to talk. They're kind of sitting off to the side with a clipboard. Yeah.
Oh my, the place I worked here in California, it was all cameras. And let me just tell you, I never actually got to that point because I got fired before that.
I can't believe you got fired.
I couldn't do it. I was in training for a week, and at the end of training, first of all, I go crying every day, because I don't want to be in an office. I don't want to be a medical role play person. I don't want to drive. It was at LA, like real close to LAX here in California. So I'm like, I don't want to drive to the airport every day. And I didn't want it, but I've done this many times in my life where I sincerely try to do a job, but I don't have skills. I just don't. So what we had to do in training was you had to watch these videos and then answer these questions afterward. And then out of those questions, you could only get like 2 wrong. And on every one, I got like a 42%, 52%. Like I couldn't concentrate. I had no concentration for this, and I cried a lot. So at the very end, the lady called me into her desk or into her office, and it was like this really plush office. And I go walking in, and she's like, "You don't really want to do this, do you?" I'm like, "No, I don't want to do this." And that was it. But I'm proud of you that you became a medical role player. I mean, I'm telling you, it's hard.
It is one of the things an actor can do to get some money.
Yeah. No, I understand. Look, I dubbed French porn, Haley. Don't tell me what you do for money. I know. By the way, that job was not hard because, most of the script, as it were, is oohs and ahs, and they can keep the French in for that, same language.
Wow.
But just every once in a while, I had to say things like, "No, Jeff, my cousin's coming over and I'm not going to make her sleep on the couch." Stuff like that. Except then the only one thing I had to say, which I was so humiliated because I'm next to the sound guy. He's like 19, he's just a kid. Yeah. And I've got this video in front and I'm trying to, I'm trying to dub these lines. Not that anybody's worried about the dubbing. And one of the lines was, "Turn me over and fuck me in the ass."
Oh no. Oh.
So I know what we do for money. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes our scruples go out the window.
That's
right.
Fine. That's right. Yeah. That's fine. All right, you guys, we're going to get over to Haley's story in just a second, but I did want to remind you that we are playing Story Smash, the storytelling game show, every month at the Hollywood Improv. Come on down Saturday, February 26th at 7:30 p.m. Head over to storysmashshow.com for the website. Check out all the pictures. It's a fun website. And you can also follow Story Smash on Insta at Story Smash. All right, you guys, she's here right now. Haley McGee, you hear her talking. She is an actor, like she said, and a writer. And she was born in Waterloo, Canada. And well, first of all, you said that. But also, when you say a boot, oh, a boot. And then we got the a boot happening, which I love. Now, I haven't heard A yet, but I think it's coming.
Eh? Have you heard sorry?
So, no.
That's the other one.
Sorry. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Aw.
I say sorry. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I like to go to the beach down in Santa Monica with my daughter and rent one of those pedal things. It's called a surrey, and then run into people and say, "Oh, surrey." All right. So you are an actress and you perform a lot of improv and you do voiceovers and you teach and all these different things that we all do. And you've also hosted the Cost of Love podcast. And what I found interesting about the Cost of Love podcast is that you really had a lot of people like on your team, as it were, helping you out.
Oh, yeah. I did one season to go along with the launch of my book in the UK. And yeah, we had a team of people working on it.
I mean, that was incredible. I mean, it has, the whole series is good, The Cost of Love. But it's, I was impressed by, you had, this editor and this music person, and you were like a little NPR over there, just getting the whole, the whole package.
Well, I do voiceovers. That's my bread and butter is my voiceover career. And I do commercial voiceovers. People might have heard me as the voice of Dove deodorant. I've done a lot of those. Voice of Stella Artois for a while, things like that. And so
fun.
I know, but it is coming from this kind of very high production audio world. And then my boyfriend also works in audio production. So it was kind of like, we're doing a podcast. But if I do a second season, which I would like to, it's going to be radically simplified because it was a lot. It was a lot.
Yeah. It seemed like a lot. I mean, I was listening to them and it did seem like a lot because like I've been doing this for over 11 years. I think you're number 720 or 721
Incredible.
in my queue. And yeah, I'm just here in my daughter's closet and I will edit this and I will put the music under and I will put it out. You know, I think it's because of how many times I've done it. You know, you just,
that's the way to do it.
There's
though.
a formula. There's a formula that you get going. Like, you know, that's kind of what it is.
One man band. And then you don't have to rely on anyone. And
I know.
You totally control the product. I think it's really, really smart how you do it.
Yeah. Well,
I definitely wouldn't recommend someone do it how I did it, but it was a good learning, it was a good learning experience.
Did you pay people? I mean, it comes down to paying people.
Yeah, I paid a few people. I didn't pay my boyfriend.
Yeah, absolutely not. My boyfriend still buys tickets to all my shows. I'm like, thank you. Even though he doesn't need a ticket or whatever, he'll buy 3 or 4.
That's
give
so
them to
nice.
your friends. Yeah, it is nice. I always appreciate that. And like I said, you guys, Haley has her first book coming out on February 1st. It's called The Ex-Boyfriend Yard Sale. And I'm telling you, it is so funny and it's smart and it's clever and you're going to love this girl. You can find her over at her website, HaleyMcGee.ca, and on Twitter at @YesHaleyMcGee. All right, you guys, wherever you are, put your hands together for Haley McGee.
Thank you so much. Okay, so this is a story about dating a chronic philanderer. And it starts when I'm 25 years old and I'm single after my first devastating adult heartbreak. From the age of 21 to 24, I'd been with a big love of mine. And it was a person who I thought, oh my gosh, I found it. I'm going to be with this person for the rest of my life. And unfortunately, it wasn't meant to be. It ended and I was devastated. I was the kind of heartbroken where you're kind of wandering around the city in a daze. And it was winter in Toronto when we broke up and I was sort of sprawling myself on picnic tables in despair and walking around I describe it as not trying to not cry, just kind of like openly weeping. I was like an opened, oozing wound of a human being. And so after about 6-8 months, I thought, okay, I'm ready to date again. And I really want to be dating someone by the time it's been a year since that horrendous breakup. So I was sort of determined. And then one night I went to a music show in Toronto with a friend, small venue in Kensington Market. And there's a performer on stage, very, very, very funny commentary between songs. And he had a reputation for being a bit of a cad. It's like, and it's the Toronto art scene. So everybody knows everybody. It's a bit of a factory town in Canada in general, and in Toronto especially. And after the show, we're having a drink in the bar. And he just from across the bar pointed at me and made a beeline. And I was like, oh boy, here we go. Here we go. It was so exciting to have somebody catch me in their crosshairs like that. It was a really new experience for me. And it was just banter, kinetic conversation. He was drinking white wine out of a cognac glass, which I thought was, now I'm like, what on earth are you doing? One of those kind of like efforts to be unnecessarily interesting. But at the time, I just thought it was so quirky and kind of funny. And the drinks were flowing in my direction. And it was like he fell in love with me on the spot and was instantly taken with me. And I loved it. I loved it so much. I think my whole life I've been waiting for some kind of whirlwind romance to happen like this, to have this kind of like instant connection. And there was one moment in the night where he was like, should we go outside and make out? And I was like, yes. We ran outside to this disgusting alleyway and just like drunkenly, sloppily making out against the vinyl siding of this venue. And he was screaming my name to the alleyways in Kensington Market, and the raccoons like rustling through garbage. And then I had rehearsal the next morning. He was like, oh, come home with me. And I was like, no, I have rehearsal in the morning. And he was like, okay, well, meet me for breakfast. And I was like, what? Before rehearsal, it started at 10 a.m. And he was like, I've just met you and I'm going home for Christmas in 10 days. I need to see you as much as I can. So I just thought this was so funny and fun. And so I met him the next morning, 8:00 in the morning at this diner, old kind of diner. I think it was, its slogan was, it's out of this world or something. It was a diner in Toronto that's been around forever, real kind of greasy spoon. And he really had a lot of nostalgia for things like this. He talked like he was in a Woody Allen movie. He was obsessed with old musicals. And during that breakfast at the diner, he got into like lurching over the table at me saying, marry me, marry me, marry me. And I was like, no. And he'd slam his hand down and say, okay, first time she said no, that's one. As if he was setting up this pattern of he was going to propose to me until I gave in. And he was planning to tell the story of it at our wedding. And the boyfriend I had before this was a very kind of shy, reserved sweetie. And this over the top thing was just, the only word for it is intoxicating. He walked me to rehearsal and I was kind of like crying with laughter and falling off the curb with giddiness, just having a blast. And then I got to rehearsal and the director I was working with, of course, knew him because it's a factory town that is the Canadian art scene. And she was the one who said to me, just write down any red flags in a little notebook so that if something does go wrong, you'll know that you knew it was coming and you weren't duped. He texted me incessantly. I would meet with him in the evenings. He texted me incessantly. And in some kind of moment of, who knows what it was, inspiration or something, I said to him, I don't think we should sleep together until after the Christmas holidays. I think we should wait. And he loved the idea so much. It was shocking, but it did something to him. He was like kind of clutching me and kissing me like a chaperoned lover. It was out of a Jane Austen novel, the kind of way he played this thwarted romantic. And as someone who loves those Jane Austen novels and those romantic heroines and those thwarted lovers stories, I was, gobbling it all up. Although every time we went out and I would, go to his gigs or he would come to my show, some kind of like mutual acquaintance would whisper to me, Haley, he's dated everyone. And
oh, no.
This is kind of what he does. It's going to be hot, and then it's going to be cold. And so I would say to him, like, I've got your number. I know about you. I know you're up to no good. And he would insist that it was different with me. And I think he was playing right into my fantasy to find a wicked young man and reform him. He really, really knew how to spin it. And I was going for it, hook, line, and sinker. So he goes away over Christmas. He's texting me like crazy. We're on the phone. I'm still in my kind of delirious state. And then he comes back and we sleep together and it's sort of just okay. I think I was expecting something kind of explosive after this huge lead up. And it's sort of a bit more of a whimper than a bang, Quite an underwhelming experience. And then his text messages slow down and his calls slow down. And it's like, okay, what's going on here? And we went out for New Year's Eve and he took me to a restaurant in Little Portugal, which is an important detail. Oh, and I also should mention, he had sent me poems by E. E. Cummings, and he'd sent me the song Make You Feel My Love by Bob Dylan is our song. And he sent me transcripts from his journal about me, like quotes from his journal that he'd written about me. And then he took me to this dinner in Little Portugal, and we went to this New Year's Eve party at one of my friends' houses. And he really got it in his head that he wanted to leave before midnight so we could just have a private moment together. So we decided to do a French exit and leave without saying goodbye to anyone. And so I kind of like rushed out of the party, and then he kind of rushed out a few moments after me and stormed to the elevator and was pressing the button, and he wouldn't talk to me. And we got in a taxi, and he burst into tears. He was like, "You were supposed to make me look cool, and it looked like you just left without me." And so,
no way.
Yeah.
Go ahead. He sobbed. Unbelievable.
He sobbed and sobbed and sobbed. And I was kind of holding him in the taxi, not really knowing what to do or what to make of any of it. And from there, things really started to take a nosedive. He did not want to sleep with me. He was not interested. He would say he was going to call and he wouldn't. He would not show up when he said he was going to meet me. And so things were really kind of fraying and falling apart. And I was so confused because I was still at a place where I thought, but you said all these things. You said you wanted to marry me. You said you were in love with me. You said, rather than being able to look at it and go, what is the behavior telling me? I was so hooked on the words. I'm such a literary person. I couldn't let go of the words that he said. And so I became quite desperate, clinging for him, trying to get him back. And then he was off 3 months on tour as a musician, and I was working in Toronto for a lot of it, so I couldn't travel. But he had been saying, when your show's done, I'll fly you out to meet me on tour. That was one of the things he said. But our communication had really dwindled. I was like, I don't even know if we're together anymore. But I did then decide, okay, you know what? Fuck it. If he wants to fly me out, he can fly me out. I think it was a last ditch effort to try to hold on to the relationship and see if I could rekindle it. So I said, yeah, fly me out. And he was suddenly like, no, I can't fly you out. No, that's not going to work. No, I'm sorry. I can't. And he didn't really have a good explanation at the time. He came back to Toronto. We had kind of ended it on the phone. We met in person, and suddenly he was really interested in me again. We had a brief little, kind of a few days back together, and then it petered out again. Okay. And so now we're in sort of summertime, and I'm away, gigging life of a Canadian actor. I'm in a town with a population of 900 people for 3 months.
Oh, God.
Yeah. The type
3
of
months,
gig.
it just seems, I know, but is it, in other words, they had to make sure everybody in the town saw it before you could move on?
Oh gosh, it was pretty much like that. Yeah. It's like, people come there from the show from all the farms around, but I'm there without a car in this town, the only person my age, and the festival, and I'm lonely, and I'm thinking about that ex who broke my heart, and I'm also thinking about this like bizarre ex. And then he starts calling and texting, and I'm ignoring him. I'm ignoring it. And one day early in the morning he calls, and I pick up, and he's like, Haley, I got really still at an ashram, and I realized what's important to me. It's you. And I want to write you a letter. And so he was like, give me your address. And so he wrote me this love letter. And I remember when the letter arrived feeling distinctly underwhelmed, because the letter was even a performance. It was all about the fact that he'd been staying in a hotel, and the hotel only had one piece of stationery on which he could write me a love letter. And how interesting was it that there was only one page to... And I thought, well, this is a letter about a piece of paper, not a letter about wanting to get back together. But somehow he convinced me to let him come to the small town I was working in so that we could go for a meal. And so he came, and he drove to this place in the middle of nowhere, and he took me out, and he laid it on thick. And so we got back together. And the whole pattern repeated itself of like fireworks to ash, but it was just a little bit faster. And this time he really didn't want to sleep with me. And I think also this time I had one foot out the door. So I was like, I wanted back in, but I didn't totally trust it. And so I kind of kept my own wandering eye going. And then I was doing another show and there was a technician there who I thought, yeah, I think that would be good. I think I'd like to go over there instead. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to break up with this guy. I'm going to break up with him before he goes home for Christmas again. And so I was all set. We were going to meet before he goes home for Christmas. I was set to break up, but he showed up with a vintage typewriter that I'd really wanted. And it was hundreds of dollars. And I was like, I can't break up with him. He gave me the vintage typewriter. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? So I didn't break up with him. And then on Christmas Eve, again, he wasn't texting. I wasn't hearing from him. He was like, well, I had to go buy tinsel at the mall with my mom. That's why I couldn't call you. And I was like, that sounds really fishy. And he called on Christmas Eve and we broke up on the phone. And it was just it was a very bizarre breakup and he cried a lot. He cried a lot when we broke up. And I kind of couldn't understand why. Okay, so we broke up and, I wasn't heartbroken. I was just kind of like confounded. Like, what happened? What dance floor did I get on and get spun around there? So now fast forward another 4 months and I'm on a date with someone new, a new handsome guy. I'm at a show and a woman taps me on the shoulder and I turn around and this new guy is like, oh, that's my roommate. And I was like, oh, okay. Hi. And she was like, hi, is your name Haley McGee? And I was like, yes. And I was thinking, oh my God, she recognizes me from, some of my stage work in Toronto. And she was like, did you date, let's call him Typewriter. Did you date Typewriter? And I was like, yes. She's like, yes, I was also dating him at the same time. And I think that he ended it with you to be with me more seriously, but now he's ended it with me to be with someone else. And that was one. And over the next year, I met 12 different women. No. All in the Canadian art scene who had been sent the same song, Make You Feel My Love, the same E. Cummings poems in the same order, the same transcripts from his journal about you, and all who'd had a meal at this same restaurant in Little Portugal. He had a pattern. And then 2 years later, I ended up doing a show. And one of the actors in it lived in another province. And we realized that we had actually dated Typewriter at the exact same time.
Haley.
And she was the reason he didn't want me to come on tour anymore, to come to meet him when he was on tour.
Sure.
Yes. So that, all of that happened. And then fast forward years and years and years, he and I have he's reached out to me. We've had a meal. He was like, I'm in recovery now. I was an addict. I was like, that makes sense of some of this. Have you also quit women? His face went bright red. I don't know. But we sort of have a kind of friendly acquaintance now. And then I'm in London and I'm performing this show that I've made, the Ex-Boyfriend Yard Sale. And I've interviewed this ex for the show and I play a recording with him in the show about our relationship. And after the show, a woman comes up to me in the lobby and she's like, was Typewriter actually, and she says his real name. And I was like, yes. And she's like, yeah, I dated him too. And I was like, oh my God, I'm in a different country. I'm in a different country. And the carnage just followed me all the way over here. So yeah, I guess the one thing that's really comforting is that all of the women were incredible. And so it's kind of nice company to be included in.
You're very generous to say that at all. Now, here is the big question. How old were you? How old was he?
Good question. I was 25 and I think he was 33. I think he was 8 years older than I am.
Yeah. Well, that sucks, man. It just really sucks. I wrote down sucks a couple of times on this notepad. And I also remember you were talking about that first breakup and how you walked around in a daze. And I remember that when I found out my first husband, that whole thing with my first husband, I remember putting shoes on backwards, walking out of the supermarket, not paying. You really walk through that haze. Now with this guy, even though it was up and down and super hot and then nothing, did you get heartbroken or did he break your heart?
No. And I think that is the great gift, because something in me knew that it wasn't to be trusted. I was having fun. And so I think I was very embarrassed. I felt ashamed and embarrassed, but I didn't feel devastated. And I'm so grateful for whatever Spidey sense in me.
Yeah, it helps when it doesn't devastate you. That I'm telling you, with all the breakups I've had, and the ex-husbands, I'm just so happy. I have only been heartbroken about 3 or 4 times. It hasn't, most of the guys, it's like, oh yeah, I saw that. Oh yeah, I knew that was happening. And things might be different without him, but I knew that wasn't happening. Even if the guy didn't like the same music I like, I knew that wasn't happening either. I knew it wasn't, because music is so important to me. You know what I mean? Like, if somebody doesn't get it, like, I might go out with them, but it's not going to stay. It's just not, because I need you to have at least some taste. Oh, wait. What was the E.E. Cummings poem? Was it Since Feeling Is First?
Yes.
That's my favorite poem.
I know.
love that poem.
It's too bad that that's his go-to.
Yeah, I've been sent that. I was sent that, and then my second marriage, I put that on the back of the brochure or whatever. You get at the wedding, you get like a thing.
Oh, yeah.
I put that on the back.
That's really nice.
Yeah, well, that marriage didn't work either. I mean, I'm just saying, even E.E. Cummings can't make it happen. You know what I'm saying?
I hear you.
Haley
I know.
McGee, go ahead.
No, you go.
I was just that you're so very talented, and I'm so happy to meet you. And this book, my ex-boyfriend yard sale, I can't even believe it hasn't been done in a way. Like, it's so smart and it's so simple. Just the idea to be on stage with all their stuff. I love it. I love it so much. I have been thinking about, I have written partly a book for my daughter called Dear Alabama. Her name's Alabama. And the idea of the book was 12 chapters, 12 different guys, 12 people to avoid. You know what I mean? As it were.
Oh, that's great. The different archetypes.
Yeah. Dear Alabama. Exactly. But you know where I'm getting tripped up? My daughter is so smart. It's not going to happen to her anyway. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not kidding. Like, kids, like, she grew up with me and my ex, but we're still friends, and he's very bright, and I'm, okay. And I'm just saying, like, she's had such a clear pathway of truth and honesty and openness about sex and about her body and all that I don't think she's going to fall for what happened to me. I can't place my 15-year-old self with her 15-year-old self. Do you know what I mean? Like, I was smoking weed and I was doing this and that, and she's running around with like a Star Wars cape and a laser thing. You know what I mean? She still likes lightsabers. You know what I mean? Like, it's not the same 15-year-old. So now the book is kind of like, I don't know if I would be writing this for her or she would need to write a book for me. You know what I mean? Because we just learn very differently.
Well, what an incredible gift you've given her, letting her in on what's been going on with you emotionally, and her being able to actually understand what's going on with the grownups all along. I think it must give her so much confidence and sort of like wise eyes to view the world in. I think it's great.
I do remember a breakup I had about 4 years ago that was specifically difficult. And I remember, crying a lot. And I would say, Bama, it is very normal for mommy to be crying because I'm really sad right now, but it's going to be better. 2 years later, I got off the kitchen floor. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. I was there for it. I was like, yeah, I get it. Yeah, it takes as long as it takes.
Yeah, it's just a passage of time for sure. But this is a great book, and it brings some levity to the whole situation. So thank you for writing it.
Oh, thank you. And I think you're very smart, for the record.
Aw, thank you, Haley.
I just wanted to have it on record.
You're adorable.
Thank you very much for having me.
You guys can find Haley again at her website, HaleyMcGee.ca, and then also follow her on Twitter at YesHaleyMcGee. All right, you guys, one more time on behalf of the very talented Haley McGee, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This was a treat.
My name is Christine Blackburn, saying, make it a story-worthy week.
You can follow me. I'll take you down to the river. Follow me. I'll keep you
for joining us on the Storyworthy podcast. We'll be back next week with all new stories. Subscribe to Storyworthy on iTunes and visit the Storyworthy website at storyworthypodcast.com.
I'll keep you satisfied.
Your favorite band's about to play a sold-out show. You got in.
Over here!
With a friend. And found a spot close enough to see the set list. They're definitely playing your song. When you're with Amex, it's not if it's going to happen, but when. American Express. Don't live life without it.
Dad's Mr. Popular at the JCPenney Father's Day sale. From teas and tech to fragrance and fitness, find cool gifts for every kind of dad. Surprise him with an iTouch Active smartwatch, now $29.99. Score major savings with doorbusters, like St. John's Bay polos, just $7.99, and shorts, $16.99. Plus, shop extended store hours Friday and Saturday. Shopping is back. JCPenney. Offers valid on select styles through 6/19. Some exclusions apply. Doorbusters and smartwatch excluded from coupons. See store or jcp.com for details.